So I got a message from a client of mine who wanted some advice and was cool with this being a public video, right? So I'm gonna take this information, let y'all hear this message that was sent to me. If you have your own desire to get a video that's made where I'm giving some advice, some dating and sex advice using my systems like the sexual polarity quadrant and my understanding of sociosexual dynamics, then just contact me. It's Coach Brodie, right? If you want to find me on Facebook, it's Brodie Dharma. If you want to find me on YouTube, it's Coach Brodie. Just message me in the comments or whatever it is, and we'll find a way to get in contact with each other, or just send me a message on Facebook Messenger, Brodie Dharma, right? You can't miss me. You're gonna recognize the same handle I have on here with, you know, me with the mango shirt on. It's the same thing that you're gonna see on my Facebook, at least for right now, right? So if you see it, go ahead, check it out. And right along the way as you check it out, the first post you're gonna see on my page is what? Adi Dottie, the Lo-Fi Soul Tape. And it's taken me actually a long time for me to get around to giving this advice, because, you know, this was something that I foresaw taking place, you know, in my own life. I foresaw being in a place where this would be the advice that people would ask of me, and that because I recognized that I wanted to make sure I lived through it and that I understood where I was coming from, so I wouldn't be selling anybody upstream. So the process of what that turned into, and me being in a situation that was probably somewhat similar to this in some different aspects and ways, is that I ended up making an album out of it, making 2 projects out of it, right? And there's still another one to come. And it wasn't just that situation, but just an overall narrative and story about my experiences and how I pretty much went from being a guy who was a gospel rapper, who was celibate for religious reasons, you know, who was very serious about that type of thing, and how I went through a deconstruction of a lot of my beliefs and morphed into a different type of believer. And along the way, a lot of the perspectives that I used to come from were disproven, and I had to confront different things, you know, and that's a process called my sexual shadow work. And I went from being that point to being a guy who likes to make baby makers and who does, you know, who lives a BDSM lifestyle 24/7, you know, who's been a serial dickmatizer, and, you know, a guy who makes content where I talk about dating and relationships on YouTube. So yeah, let's listen to what he's got going on. Let's hear the story. Let's have an open mind and understand there may be some things you may not quite understand, but there's typically going to be some videos that you can watch of mine on my YouTube channel that you can reference to gain this type of information. And anything that you hear from my channel or another channel that really resonates with you, that could be a cool little clip, you know, just put something in the comments that say, you know, the timestamp on it, right? Hit the like, hit the subscribe. And if you see something on it that needs a timestamp, just go ahead and put it on there so that we can be in a position of having this conversation, right? So that I can, because it's going to pop up in my clips and then I can use it as shorts, and it makes it easier for me to get content done, right? That's just me being lazy. Listen, they say the game is supposed to be sold and not told. I do sell game, but there's some game I post publicly, and the price of it is just that, you know, until I get to a certain position where it's making me enough money, until I get to a certain position where I have certain things worked out the way I need to, that the price of the game is that I may not always clean it up for you. I may not always have the best presentation. I may not. Want things raw, keep things uncut, keep things unfiltered. But it also affords me different things. All of these things connect together. The same stories connect to the projects that I posted, right? Young Niggas to Tailor Sexual Shadow Work and Adi Dottie the Lo-Fi Soul Tape. So check those out. So let's listen to what this guy's talking about, see where he's coming from.
Situation. Improved in some things, worse in others. There are more moments in which she responds in a non-feminine, submissive and more neutral way as a friend. Less.
All right, so when we hear this part, what we need to understand is that the woman is investing more and more from a space where the things she's doing that display feminine submissive characteristics are not coming from a place of desire and respect, but they're coming from a place of more of a masculine energy. Understand that friendly, platonic, nurturing, loving energy from a woman is either going to be prematurely integrated or it's going to be integrated. right? So either the foundation of your program and your baseline principle is mutually already established, right? Once a woman starts showing these, so it's over top of whatever she already feels for you with her intrinsic desire and intrinsic reward. But what you also have to understand in the process of this is that although that may be what's going on, you also have to be consciously and cognizantly aware of how much the woman naturally desires you. Because if you are not staying in touch with your dominant empathy and you allow yourself to get to a position where a woman feels like she's meeting your sexual needs or meeting your ego needs, you know, for any type of way of control, even if it's covertly, right? Even if it's just to keep the peace because she feels like you're going to react badly, she's building up a case against you within her animus. You know, the more she feels that she has to be responsible for your emotions, the more she feels like she needs to be responsible for your needs, the more it's going to be a circumstance in which she's really just dealing with you long enough to lose enough respect for you to eventually break the covert contract or the overt contract, you know, and to use whatever limerent animus projection of you she used to have as the motivation for her to have better going into the future. Now, where you're at right now is probably a situation where you want to be the beneficiary of this success or the beneficiary of this growth. And what I'm telling you is this, that you accept if this woman is on your program or not, where she is, or you got to win the game to change the rules, or you need to become the integrated masculine. And those are your options, right? So let's go to the next part.
Arguments because I'm putting less pressure on her about what I want to change, but when they happen they are more serious. I hold her back so as not to leave because I know she would regret it, and I wouldn't give her a second chance, and she does it because she insists on talking than before because she says she has accumulated.
All right, so something very important to understand here is that when it comes to the animus, when it comes to dealing with a woman who's getting into animus possession, that's not okay, right? There might be some times where this can be consented into your arrangement. This can be part of whatever your understanding is of how y'all want to do things. But understand that you never need to be restricting a woman's freedom to come and go as she pleases. I know it's really hard, but what you have to understand is that to be a dominant man, you have to sacrifice the animal projection, which means that your stability in your own life needs to be based off of yourself. Meaning that you shift this animal projection, this mother complex, from this woman into exploring the world on a basis of understanding how it really works. And when this is what you have going on, there's a certain level of your ego that desires more validation, more adoration, more sexual access than you truly have the competency to create with the woman, nor the security to accept how she feels about you in that moment. And in order to accept it, you feel like you need to cling tighter to this covert contract, right, of her sexual loyalty towards you. But understand that in order for this woman to feel truly safe, that covert contract is going to have to die, right? When you're using the biology first approach, then you get to see a woman's sexual shadow up front, but you still have to transition the proper way. If a woman's love bombing you, if she's bait and switching, if, you know, she's just looking for a fling, or that woman is willing to accept a more deeper narrative of the relationship than she's really looking to act on, to follow through with, if you choose to take the responsibility of giving the woman what she wants as far as a more closely connected relationship, rather than you first vetting to see if this woman can consistently keep up with this, what you're going to do is create a scenario where you're just going to be giving more work to yourself. And it's kind of like, if you watch anime, is Shunsui's Bankai, right? The part where you're sharing the wounds and then you're both drowning out in your Ryatsu. If the understanding of your relationship dynamic, the structure of it, is one that is so contrary to your program, and one that makes it so easy for a woman to be able to trigger you with, in order to manipulate you with access to sex, the idea of her having sex with someone else, with the idea of how respectful she's being to you, it's not gonna work, right? So what I'm gonna tell you is this right here. If you're doing this with a covert contract, where there's an expectation of what she should be willing to give you back when you're choosing to not put any expectation on sex. Understand that if you don't win the game to change the rules during that period of time, there's going to be a problem, because eventually your cup is going to get low, and once your cup gets low, that's where the things occur. So understand the vicinity principle. To the best of your abilities, you don't need to be spending more time in a woman's presence than how much sexual attraction and respect she has for you. If she can't keep it up, like even if it is a love bomb, if you exit the situation, right, and see her another time, right, or you exit the situation and give her space to build her feelings for you on her own time, and you move at a steady pace, you let her desires for you lead where things are going to go, not from a perspective of her leading what you're going to do with your life, but from a perspective of whatever she wants with you, you need to set your standard within your own mind of what's the minimum behavior you need to see in order to even entertain the conversation, right? As far as your program and the baseline principle. And then after you get to that point, that's where, if she's met that minimum standard where you can have that conversation, you see if she's teachable about actually repairing what little things need to be done, or has enough humility to accept needing to step it up even from there to gain the validation and show that she can do it consistently. Because if not, sometimes a woman gets in Delilah syndrome. Sometimes a woman may just be in an insecure place where she's in limerence with you, and she wants the validation of children or of living together, or the validation of being able to say she's with a man who does this or does that, or she wants the validation of being able to say that she's married. She wants the validation of being able to say somebody's paying her bills, but it doesn't necessarily mean that she's looking to be a wife or looking to really be your girlfriend or looking to really be submissive with you. It doesn't mean that. And if you agree to a relationship dynamic with a woman when she's love bombing you, she's not going to feel like she's responsible for the change, because it's oftentimes, even if it is, but even most of the time, it's not going to be an active love bomb. It's going to be a situation where that woman is simply operating on instinct, where if she projects onto you out of insecurity when she meets you, or just out of attraction for you in an idea of you, if she projects onto you in a certain type of way, then what's going to occur? She's going to, maybe if she really likes you, she's going to try to put her best foot forward. If you catch her hand in the cookie jar, she's going to throw it at you with a good hand. But she still needs to see that she's safe with you, right? So understand that you're getting to a point where the woman feels like she can't fully and openly and freely express herself, right? That's not a good position to be in, right? It seems cool because you're having less arguments, but oftentimes that's just the woman checking out. And as she begins to check out, when she expresses herself, it's going to be more hurtful things she's going to say when she checks out. And what you have to understand along the way is that if she's not fully checked out yet, then if you don't react or respond in a way that shows weakness or shows that there's a hole in your animus, that every single one of these tests is really an opportunity for her to grow her attachment or her attraction or her feeling of safety with you. It's not really about how consistent you are with what you say necessarily. That is important, but at the level that she's at with her psychology, she's not yet at a level to where conscious conversation and communication is really going to be what makes it happen. The communication is only going to be effective if this communication is you validating where she's coming from, expressing things that make her feel safe, and then only agreeing to things if it's going to be something that you're willing to change what you're doing to make it a more suitable environment for her. But what you have to understand is that if what a woman is requesting from you is not going to be a sustainable cycle of energy for you, you have to know how to not agree to that. You know, if you're not mean now, you're going to have to be mean later. If you allow a situation to get prematurely integrated, understand you have to win the game to change the rules. Right? You have to win the game to change the rules. If you want to be dominant and you allow a situation to move forward too quickly, the price that you're going to have to pay is either that this woman is going to have to break that covert contract and you're going to have to rise above, like on The Best Man, right? When you're going to be stuck with those mental images of somebody you probably know beating it down, and to humble yourself, be on some Hosea Gomer type of shit in the Bible, right? Or the price of that is going to be that you're going to have to break your own heart, right? The price of it is going to be that you have to kill your own attachment to that woman, because you being attached to her is stepping on her toes. I'm going to just tell you something real. The fact that you're so attached to this woman is not giving her space to be more attached to you, to be more feminine with you. She's starting to feel more trapped and caged in rather than feeling free, because your desire to want to work things out, regardless of how logical you feel like it is, or to want to avoid something negative happening, like, it's not really stopping anything, right? It's only exacerbating this psychological reactance.
For example, the last time was around the end of January. See details in the third, fourth column of text. Sexual side. About.
All right, so that's a different part. You can address that at a different time.
Once or twice a week on average. The last week 4 days in a row and 1 day 2 times. Generally only when she is physiologically excited, because most of the time she is no longer receptive to me sexually and is not, let's say, fixed at a level 8, and in fact she hasn't had an internal orgasm for at least half a month.
I mean, that's something that happens sometimes, right? No relationship is in polarity 100% of the time, right? What you have to understand is that it's soft switches, right? Your goal is just to make sure that the ways in which you do a masculine submissive exercise and self-control, or that she does the masculine submissive exercise and self-control, is able to generate and stimulate enough of a spark to where you can take control of the situation and lead it forward. And you're going to have to take that risk that she's not always going to understand as you're pulling back in those scenarios. She's going to expect you to communicate more. And the more things that you've done, the more things you've expressed, it closes up holes in the animus. And once too many holes in those animus have been closed up, it's going to be too late for you. Like, by the point all of those little tricks that you've tried, if you've been unable to create a sustainable feedback loop to where most of the things that you need in a relationship are being consented to in a regular part of the relationship, then yeah, you're gonna have to go the safety route. And unless you're willing to become the integrated masculine, right, it's probably not gonna work for you.
She would accept a little more, but given the past, I only want to do it when she completely wants it. It is rare that we do it when she doesn't really want it.
That's good, that's good. But what you also have to understand is this, right? Are you self-soothing or outsourcing enough to maintain your cup, right? Whatever your needs are you outsourcing in a way that is understandable to your dynamic, and are you successful enough at it? I'm gonna tell you some real shit. If you're not behaving in a way to where you can consistently sexually attract other women, you're probably not behaving in a way that's going to consistently sexually attract the woman that you're with. I know sometimes that women will try to put pressure on you for a monogamous relationship. Sometimes women will want that relationship to be monogamous. They'll want it to be just the two of you. They want all these different things, but understand that just because they want it doesn't mean that they're thinking about what it's going to take for this to actually be a sustainable cycle of energy. You have to hold the line for yourself, because if not, you're going to have to hold and stand on business in a time where it may be much more serious. But it's good that you're trying not to make sure you're not sleeping with her unless you want it. Make sure there's enthusiastic consent. That's good. But sometimes what you need to do is you take those times where she does want it and get to a place with her to where you let this extend outside of just that moment of wanting it. If you give her the sex this exact moment that she wants it, and that's what's going on, then as soon as she gets hers, now sex is off her mind. Now she feels like it's something that's crossed off of her list, like a chore, like she's crossing you off her chore list. You're just trying to get above that chore list. So you kind of stepped back into understanding that you have to seduce her every single time from this masculine submissive exercise and self-control level, right? So every single time is a seduction where you're at. And understand that whatever her natural level of sexual attraction is towards you is where she's going to get to in a long enough relationship. That's why the baseline principle is still important. You're just trying to make sure that the things that you need in that relationship for it to work out, and the things that she needs in order for the cycle of energy to be sustainable, that those things are present. It really depends on how dominant you really want to be in your life. If this is something that's standing in the way of you getting what you need to get done, she's a distraction.
can see that the polarity has dropped from trivial things like she no longer blushes when I look at her. Now when I look at her more intensely, she asks me what's up in a questioning way.
Now check this out. This is a very vital thing. You got to turn that anxiety into dominant empathy. You being able to be consciously aware of the smaller, more subtle signs that show that she's losing interest is something that is a good sign. The law of momentum: what you feed will grow and what you starve will die. You got to know how to use strategic honesty. If she's not receptive enough, and this is what happens, right? Once you start communicating these things, or you start getting frustrated and your desire starts to leak, instead of you sending your desire elsewhere or transmuting it into something that's just going to be beneficial to you, right? Like, listen, if this woman is not already on point and on your program, you don't need to be trying to transmute energy into that relationship with her. That's something I had to learn the hard way. Is not a good decision. That energy needs to be going into yourself to where you're less desperate, where you're less needy. That energy needs to be going into your own purpose, your own vision, your own goals, right? That's very important to understand. So sometimes when you're looking at her more intensely, this emotional or this strong desire, this longing, if her respect for you and her desire, if she doesn't feel safe enough with you to where she wants to be objectified with you, where she wants to be dominated and ravished by you, where she isn't craving this experience, she isn't looking up to you, she doesn't respect you on a certain level, then what you have to understand is that the more you want her, the more it's going to cause her to want to run away. Right? Once you make that overt contract covert and you try to communicate and negotiate desire, if it's simply a matter that that woman just didn't desire you enough, then as you start to close up these holes in the animus, thinking that you're going to be able to create a strategy where whatever created the hole in the animus, where she was, accessible to you sexually, that this can become a regular running thing, understanding that the moment you try to communicate and articulate, instead of showing then telling, like instead of this really becoming a consistent thing that works, and this gets to a point where you can manage this cycle, manage these behaviors without crossing certain lines, and that she can consent to it and accept it and like it and all that other stuff, then oftentimes once you express different holes in the animus, it's just going to cause her to more strongly adhere to whatever that is, to close it up, to view whatever you're doing to get that reaction as covert neediness, right? As desperation. And what you have to understand is that once she meets a new man, he's going, if she's attracted enough to him, he's still going to get the benefit of the doubt about all of the same manipulation tactics that you're using. Don't think that when she starts to be stronger with you, that this means that she's becoming stronger as a woman and stronger as a person. No, it just means she's starting to lose attraction and respect for you, right? You got to win the game to change the rules. If you're sitting there and thinking, you know what, now she's getting stronger, now she has more boundaries, the real wake-up call is going to come when another man eventually comes into the picture. You got to already have yourself prepared for that and decide that you're going to win the game to change the rules where you're at. If it's not already a situation where another one is in the mix, right? Then if her attraction desire hasn't dropped too low for you yet, and it seems like it's about there already, then if you give her the safety and the freedom, you stop trying to criticize and you just start to slowly pull back emotionally, not to be butthurt, right? Not to be retaliatory, because once she considers whatever you're doing to pull back as retaliatory, this is going to close the hole up in her animus, and she's going to view it as weakness, and she's just going to get stronger because she's going to view it as you're doing this because you want her, or you want her a specific way, right? Listen, the animus is going to protect a woman for two different things. It's going to protect her from being sexually accessible to someone she doesn't deem as worthy, right? Which is someone who she's either sexually attracted to or feels safe enough with, based on her level of sexual attraction to that particular person. And then her animus is going to protect her from being psychologically influenced away from her social programming or her internal narrative of how she thinks and feels about things. The reason why you want sex to be at the foundation is because once you can rewire a woman's internal narrative within her body about how she interprets certain experiences, if you really digmatize her, you really take her to subspace, and she feels safe when she goes into that sexual fog, instead of disassociating out of, feeling trauma, right? she's disassociating from a perspective of going into subspace, and then she gets to shut off her brain when she's around you, which is a way of you overcoming the animus. A feminine submissive woman is a woman who acknowledges the role of her animus and the sabotaging of the dynamic of the relationship. Once a woman's cup gets too low, she's not going to be able to recognize and discern the difference between the feminine core of who she is and her animus. And oftentimes this is going to take place part and parcel due to the fact that in order for her to maintain her attachment with you, she's going to have to base it off of what you do for her rather than how she feels about you. And that's the truth of the matter.
Although when we don't argue with 0 arguments every day for a longer time, it starts to come back and increase the polarity. Part of
I'm gonna listen to this next sentence, this next part.
low average sexual activity, I think that in addition to the ruin of the polarity, is that she is in a low cup for how she sees herself in life, and because she has gained weight and doesn't have many friends since she's been with me. But I'm trying to do like Mr. Justin, or take a dog to follow you without a collar and force because you leave him freedom and he loves you. The only things I still forbid her are going to the disco alone, having male friends, and that when she goes out alone she has to dress more covered and not release certain provocative content on social media.
Hey, listen, I've been exactly there, and Mr. Justin was the person exactly who I talked to, right? When you hear this song, right? When you hear this song, Adi Dadi, for the song Adi Dadi, the Lo-Fi Soul Team, that was a song about me being in that exact same situation. I actually wrote that song when I was fucked up about being in that exact same situation with a woman, and I was trying to figure out how to make it work. And I talked to Mr. Justin, and he told me, like, you need to write down your program. Like, if you know, I was really fixated on trying to figure out how to repair relationships, how to resolve things, how to do all these different things when it came to relationship dynamics. And I recognized that so many people's desire for advice came from wanting to repair situations that they're already in. But a lot of the game that I've had so far has been really front heavy, and then some things were kind of like short-term little things to catch a little leverage with the woman in a long-term situation, right? And what I learned along the way, man, was, shit, shout out to Mr. Justin. I was able to turn that moment where he told me to write down my program. I wasn't able to write it down. I was getting writer's block. And what I ended up doing was just writing a song called Adi Dadi that expressed my program, and I'm living it today. Like, you know, exactly what I was talking about, exactly what I knew about myself, man, that shit put me into imposter syndrome. Because what you have to understand is that, you know, a woman's animus, a woman is going to view you how she feels about, eventually she's going to view herself how she feels about you sexually if she's loyal to you. All right? If that woman truly accepts the narrative of what she's capable of sexually, and this is not from a place of her already feeling safe with you and growing in her desire towards you over time, what's going to typically begin to occur is that that woman is going to have to accept that she could be more sexually available towards someone else. That's something that you could play with, or something that you could leave alone. If you hit that woman's baseline and you're creating positive feedback loops with her body, that's a point where you can have that conversation. But you have to understand that you don't present certain things to a woman that are vulnerabilities unless you've already worked through them, or unless you don't mind leaving the woman if she crosses those lines. So any of these boundaries that you gave her, if she crosses them, right, it needs to be one of those situations where you need to be willing to walk away. You don't go to a woman to tax her, because that can easily turn into a narrative where she could say you coerced her. So if she crosses that line, you need to walk away. And if you assess the situation from walking away and say, you know what, she's not worth it anymore, you leave her alone. But if she crosses that line and you walk away and then she wants to come back around, that's where you tax her. But you still have to have dominant empathy when you're taxing, right? See, if you understand that the woman's primary desire for you is based on a non-sexual foundation, then there are two ways to earn that respect, right? Two ways to get a woman to respect you in your masculine frame as a man, right? One is to be the integrated masculine, which means that you learn to go directly through the animus, through making the woman feel safe and going through, like, if you really want to learn to be the integrated masculine, Jeffrey Sedawan's model is like the best model for being the integrated masculine. It's one of the best that's out there, right? You know, and that foundation goes of emotional safety, psychological safety, goal alignment, sexual passion, and then above sexual passion, it's self-actualized goals. That model works different when you're using a biology-first approach. That model works different when you're an androcentric psychology man, right? Because what you have to understand is this. If what you really do want is power and control, if what you really do want is to have influence with this woman, then there's going to be an ugly phase that you're going to have to go through with giving this woman full freedom to be whoever she wants to be. That if you recognize within yourself that you're only willing to accept this woman because of your belief of what she's not doing and how she's not carrying herself, and you know that's what she wants to do, understand that if you can't tell a woman no, you can't tell her yes, right? If you create this forbidden fruit type of thing for a woman, she's going to want it more and more. And when I say that a woman feels about you the way she feels about herself eventually the way she sees you sexually, meaning that the effect that your sex has on her in her life and how she relates to it, what things can take away from her desires, that's going to be influenced by how she feels towards you. Always remember this, that a woman with depression, there's two types of women with depression. One woman is going to lose her libido because she's giving her man Scooby snack pussy, and then the other woman is going to eat dick and choose it over oxygen. She's going to choose the validation of being seen as desirable by her man as something that gives her an escape from that depressive state that she's in. If her attraction to her respect isn't high enough for you, you have to understand that eventually over time, you may think that you're making leeway by communicating with the woman and trying to express these reciprocal analogies of letting her know how you feel. But what you have to understand is that if she doesn't naturally feel in a way where she wants to give you what you want, then all this is going to do is create pressure, and if it actually sticks, it's going to create a feeling of guilt, and that woman's oftentimes not going to be able to come out on the other side and validate what you're saying until she feels like she has enough space and distance from you to not have you trying to enforce on her what you want her to do. It's really hard to understand this, and when I say you have to sacrifice the animal projection to be dominant, what I mean is that this whole idea that a woman is going to come into your life and give you peace, this whole idea that a woman is going to come into your life and be someone that you can look at the idea of wanting a relationship with her to motivate yourself, or wanting access to her, or a greater level of access to her sexually to motivate yourself to improve yourself in life, that this is false. Listen, the number one rule you got to understand is that you got to be that guy or let her fuck that guy in peace if you want to be in a happy integrated relationship. Right? Are you going to be Dale Gribble, or are you going to accept the truth? The more you accept this information, unless you accept, truly accept that what she's bringing to your life non-sexually and what she's doing for you is enough to where you don't care what she's doing when you're not around, or that you're already touching a sexual baseline that's according to your program with how receptive she is to you, to where you're not worried about what she's doing when you're not around, that woman can actively continue to lose respect for you by feeling like she can manipulate you through a narrative. Anytime any of these excuses that she used can become things that she uses to kind of just control the narrative and the flow of the frame of the relationship and sex in general, that woman's losing respect for your leadership skills. Right? So, it's a powerful thing that you said about, taking a dog with a collar and let them have freedom. That's so important. But if you're already projected with your anima, you're either it's not going to work for you, right? You can try it and then, set yourself up for some let that hurt go dick, as in you tap into let that hurt go dick. If you're really, really lucky, you might be with a woman where if you handle it the right way and she crosses the line enough, she'll accept and consent to a trauma bond. And then you just have to know how to carry the situation from there. But understand that the price along the way for wanting a woman to be fully feminine submissive with you is that you have to be the anima projection. You have to be the animus projection. If you want that woman to be submissive with you, you have to be that guy. You have to be the imprint. And if you want the relationship more than she does, you're not that guy. Because what has she done? What has she shown you? You have to understand, there's an internal price in the mind of a submissive. Right? Watch that video again. There's internal price in the mind of a submissive. In the mind of a submissive woman, how things work is like this. There is an ideal within her anima, right? Her anima, about the best version of herself. And that a man who is really worth his salt, his weight in salt, that this is going to be a man who's not going to accept her unless she's at least at that level. Right? Although she may idealize the idea of an integrated man, if she doesn't accept herself where she is, she's not going to accept you for accepting her. You setting yourself for a blow-up principle, right? And, you know, trying to control a woman and all this other stuff, it doesn't work. This is the difference between controlling, right? If she fucks up enough, you know, you either can walk away and she come back around, but your best bet is probably going to be to demote the woman, right? When she crosses a certain line, you demote her down. You take this time to lower your level of attachment and your expectation. You use the sense of freedom and safety that you give this woman to get opened up to the knowledge of who she really is, to get red pilled about her and what she really wants to do, and to not try to control her about what she does along the way. And understand that if she fucks up to a point where you don't want to take her back, that's her loss. But anytime your perspective on a woman is that if she crosses this line, I don't want to take her back, your perspective should either be that you're so serious about this that whether she knows or not, it doesn't matter, or that you're never at a point where a woman has so much control over how you feel to where there's some type of ultimatum in your mind to where if she walks away, she can never come back. All right, cool, stand on that. If you're gonna stand on that, stand on that. But understand that once you express these points of view and you say this is how you feel, that if you break that and you don't stand on business and she hits you with that shit test, you've ultimately given up the high ground. Now you're in a position where you've pretty much admitted and expressed to her that you're her bitch. So what you got to do is stop rewarding bad behavior with good dick. If you got some good dick, stop rewarding bad behavior with it, right? Don't worry about all that shit she may say about you being narcissist or trying to control things, right? If you've already told a woman what you want, trying to overly communicate about things, it is not going to be a situation where it's going to help, right? Never try to communicate and articulate things in a position where you feel unsure or if you feel activated. The best thing you can do is say nothing. And if that woman doesn't come around and try to bridge the gap when you say nothing, understand she is too far gone, right? And when she tries to bridge the gap, that's when you let, like anytime a woman says something that gets you confused, right? Understand that this is an attack from the animus. If you get confused with what she says and anything along those lines indicates she's saying something that shows that she doesn't want to deal with you anymore, man, you need to fall the fuck back, right? Listen, yes, there's healthy communication. Yes, there's all these things. But when you're a masculine dominant man, you can still get into an integrated relationship, but you're trying to get into an integrated relationship from a standpoint of dealing with a woman who's already feminine submissive. You're trying to integrate through polarity, at least as a starting point. And yes, what you need to develop along the way is the capacity to do masculine submissive exercises and self-control, to do soft switches. But if soft switches become the majority of your relationship dynamic, you're now in a position where you're washed, right? She's going to begin to feel more friendly towards you. She's going to begin to feel more platonic towards you. If she really does love you and who you are, she may feel more motherly, right? Never let a woman, and this is the thing about vulnerability, right? This thing about vulnerability. If the woman is choosing to do things for you from a space of trying to be compassionate and understanding towards your needs, rather than her respecting you on the principle and understanding that this is the only way she's really going to have access to you, then that woman may give too much of herself from a position of not even recognizing the covert contract behind it. The woman starts trying to be on some shit where she's solving this and solving that for you, and she starts to feel like she's the leader. Before you know it, she's no longer in a position where she feels like she doesn't have to think about you. Another one, stop trying to have super serious conversations with women, right? Unless she's in a high level feminine submissive space where you can tell that she's not only receptive to you sexually, but above that, she's also receptive to you psychologically, and she's seeking more guidance from you, right? And she's implementing and using the guidance that you're giving her. Stop giving her free guidance. Stop giving her free game, because she's losing respect for you because you're casting your pearl before the swine, right? If you really want to be masculine dominant, this bitch gonna have to sink or swim, right? And you have to understand that if she sinks, yes, you're gonna have to deal with the fact that if you've projected your animal onto this woman, you're gonna have to start over, right? You have to start over, and this is gonna be your sign to say, you know what? You put your hand on the hot stove. You being in this situation at all right now is you putting your hand on the hot stove. This is you putting yourself in a situation where there's a certain level of your animal that's projected onto this woman to where this is serious enough to you. It's not that serious to her. Like, it is. She's going through things, but understand, I'm gonna say this. This is what I will say. Like, I've dealt with that with the weight gain. I've dealt with that with the hormonal issues. I've dealt with it with religion. I've dealt with it with family's opinions. I've dealt with it with the wanting to post provocative content on social media for validation, right? If you really want to know some real shit, I can tell you something, right? I'm gonna say this: you gotta win the game to change the rules. Now, for me, I have developed a system that I've developed for myself when it comes to creating emotional safety with a woman. My system for creating emotional safety is the biology first approach, right? So because I understand the ego is based off of return on investment, I set my minimum level of sexual energy I need to receive from a woman, or what activities and behaviors and type of experiences we need to have. And once that standard is set for myself, I accept the situation for what it is, and I use those opportunities to get exposed to that woman's shadow. And if anything she does with me, I'm not going to judge her for if she's done it with someone else, right? Anything that I benefit from that we're transparent and agreed to, right? And I'm talking about close to the time. I'm not talking about just somewhere months and months ahead of time, right? That I benefit from. Also, anything that she's transparent about, not that I have to dig for, but anything she's transparent about, and I decide that I'm still willing to move forward and become further invested, I can't hold any of those things against a woman I'm dealing with. And what this does is it does create a scenario where I do have to hold myself accountable, right? I do have to hold myself accountable to sometimes, man, there's things even I hear that may hurt my ego, and you like, shit, you got to suck it up, my boy. You know, not being willing to suck it up, my boy, is how you kind of find yourself in a position where you're at a tight spot. You're at a tight spot because you are attached to how that woman used to feel about you, right? And not only are you attached to how she used to feel about you, but you're also afraid of the idea of her feeling that way about someone else. And once you're afraid of her feeling that way about someone else, you're already in a position where you're cooked. Because if you decide you want to be vulnerable and express how you feel, her desire not to fuck someone else is going to come from a masculine place of trying to protect your feelings, rather than it just not being something that she wants to do that bad, right? And I understand, man. I also hate that perspective of saying that you don't want something is how you get it, or not having a needy energy or desperate energy is how you get what you want. But the truth of the matter is this right here, man. It's like, if she doesn't want what you want enough for you to say what you want directly, then you have to accept that you have to treat this more like a falling goal, where you have to win the game to change the rules, rather than it being a position where it works that way. And also understand that if a woman, there's also situations where a woman can cross the line with her animus because she's already checked out, right? And she's fully accepting it and expecting you to walk away, and she's not going to turn back around. And if she does, it's going to take her some time of finally receiving the freedom that you weren't willing to give her. And if she reaches back out and she's trying to engage with you, and you're too activated, too hurt, too butthurt over what she's experienced or what she's done in the past, then she's going to just further take her power back and then just be done with dealing with you altogether. Right? Until a woman has reached a point where she's feminine submissive with you and she's really seeking and sure about you and wants things to work out, her game is going to be about giving you as little as she can give you, or in as intermittent of a fashion as possible, so that she can get you attached enough, so that she can get you to reactively do some type of behavior that's going to give her the narrative that she feels unsafe, so that she can take her power back and move on. Right? Right? And that's where the controlling shit comes from. Listen, understand this. Nothing that you expect from her is something that would be unrealistic in a situation where she truly wants a guy. And if it is unrealistic in a situation where she truly wants a guy, then guess what? That's just who she is, and you need to accept her for who she is. You have to be that guy or let her fuck that nigga in peace, right? Be that nigga or let her fuck that nigga in peace. I know you're not black, but that's how I say it, right? That's how I look at it. So let's go to this last sentence of this situation right here.
Now, however, she can also go out at night, for
this is not the
example,
last
with
one.
her friends, even if she almost never does it. She is also inconsistent about whether I can go with other women, or rather, whether to do it with others with her or without her. The last time we did it with another woman was 1.5 years ago, where she paid an escort.
All right, cool. So what's going on here is that you're in a position where she's found a hole in your anima, and she is able to manipulate you through you being compassionate towards what she says she is and isn't willing or able to do. This doesn't mean that you try to overpower her to get her to do what you want her to do. What this means is that you understand that you need to be less invested. Right? That's what it means. That means you need to learn how to, if you love this woman, love in a non-attached way. Now, it does seem like things have improved somewhat, but just make sure that if those arguments get explosive or those disagreements get explosive, you always have to be the more calm one. And if she leaves, let her leave. Right? One thing I've learned is, because I've also dealt with that anxious attachment type of thing where you feel that abandonment shit and you feel all these different things. If you set a price in your mind about what the choosing fee is going to have to be, what somebody's going to have to do when they come back around to recoup the amount of energy you had to put in to being patient with not trying to bridge that gap yourself, or being patient with, you know, having to do the emotional work to work through whatever narcissistic injury you dealt with, right? That if you set a price in your mind of what it would take for you to be willing to engage with this individual again, and you stand on business about sticking to that price, then, you know, this will give you some level of self-respect. You'll have that power back, right? If the woman comes around, tries to hoover you, she tries to breadcrumb you, she tries to love bomb you, whatever it is, you need to set your price. Right? Now, what you do have to understand is this. If you're able to separate yourself from this sexually possessive thing, then there's something beautiful that can be found in this woman going out to the game and going to the streets, and you just accepting, listen, I am the streets. If you're a dominant man, you are the streets. But you don't feel comfortable with that because you know where the energy's at. If you make her feel safe enough, then some of that energy she experiences will transmute to you. Just understand that she may not be able to consistently keep up with the things she's doing to keep her energy on point. And if you get too comfortable with those momentary increases in attraction and desire and respect, and this becomes a covert contract that, you know what, you're okay with the situation because of how she can transmute energy, and then you start trying to logically convince her to transmute energy, then typically psychological reactor is eventually going to hit this as well. You got to give her the ultimate freedom until she's willing to sign her until she's hit the internal price in the mind of a submissive and she's absolutely sure about you. And even then, you need to give it some more time. Because listen, there's a whole other game you have to get to once a woman decides she's sure about you, or that she likes you, or that she wants you, or that she's feminine submissive with you. From that point, man, now you got to deal with a whole other gambit of things. What if she wants to fuck you too much? What if you don't recognize how much of your desire to try to make that relationship work was based off of you having some bratty tendencies in yourself and just liking a challenge and wanting, and having a corruption kink and just wanting to virtue signal with your corruption kink? If you're a dominant man and you're dealing with a woman who's not fully open to you, you have to accept that this is a corruption kink, right? If the understanding isn't fully understood between her having a gynocentric perspective and you having an androcentric perspective, then y'all are still doing the masculine submissive exercise and self-control, and y'all are attempting to groom one another. You're attempting to do it through logic, right? You're attempting to do it through trying to create sustainability. You want it to be more of a situation where she's seeking security from you rather than you seeking security from a woman. Anytime you're seeking peace and security from a woman and the consistency of her actions and behaviors instead of letting her flow and be like a cat, right? You're in a position where you're really the one who is pursuing that consistency from a limerent space, right? if you look at this dynamic and you switch the roles and you take your ego away from the position of having to see yourself as the dominant here. Let's say that woman did a good enough masculine submissive exercise and self-control that hit your baseline, and you're like, you know what, this is a woman who I could be with. You know, at that point, it is what it is. Either you have to sacrifice, you have to kill Mary, sacrifice the animal projection, or you have to eventually get to a point where, I mean, either way, you have to sacrifice it. There's no way around it, right? If what y'all doing is working for you, cool, but this is the hard part about it. This is the hard part about it. If you give her the full validation of being as fully attractive as she could be right now, then you're going to be very liable for a glow-up principle if she ever reaches that point, because who is convincing her and encouraging her to be in a position where she becomes more attractive if it's not you, right? Which means that right now, you should be assessing this situation on paper to see where she fits in the model of transitional dating, right? Now, if you're in a position where there's an expectation of how you need to show up emotionally, socially, financially, or whatever it is with this woman on a regular basis, that's something that you kind of already subtly agreed to. But if you haven't consciously agreed to it, these are things that she's also not entitled to, right? This is the truth of the matter. She's also not entitled to these things. And because she's not entitled to these things that you're doing for her, you don't want to abuse the power in a certain type of way. But what you do want to understand is that you want her to want more security from you, but not just to want it, but to be willing to do something to get it. Sometimes you just have to get a woman to a point where she's willing to cross the line, and then you use the reverse psychology and you give her the opportunity to choose for herself. It's a terrible example, but listen, it's worked on a woman that I loved. Like when I made Adi Dottie, eventually that's how that situation worked, right? It was the coldest game of masculine submissive exercise and self-control I ever seen. I'm gonna tell you this right here. If you want to be masculine dominant, you aspire to be masculine dominant, but you're in a prematurely integrated relationship, and you're with a woman and you're trying to logically convince her why you should be masculine dominant, understand a man who's doing a masculine submissive exercise and self-control and who's just not invested in her and don't care that much about her can absolutely fuck your bitch. Absolutely. Because he's going to give her the freedom to do whatever she wants to do. I remember songs that we played when I was in that situation. It's like you hear a woman playing Kurt Cobain's Drinking My Cup. Like, your girlfriend want a nigga like me because I ain't trying to control her. And that's the truth. Right? I'm going to tell you two things that are true at the same time. Your desire to control a woman that doesn't want to be controlled by you is weakness. But what it is that you want is not something that's unrealistic. There are women who will want exactly that. Like right now, I have a submissive in my life who a few months into us dealing with each other, you know, she asked for permission to be my slave. I didn't ask her to be my submissive. I didn't ask her to be my slave. But are you competent enough? Is your anima healed enough to really believe that you deserve a feminine submissive woman? Or do you think that, like, listen, anytime you're trying to figure out how to win a woman over who isn't receptive to you, you're trying to measure up to her animus, mean that she is your imprint, or you're allowing her to influence your imprint. And this can become dangerous because if you view your imprint as if women do not have the ability to understand and to logically consent to what you have to say and what you want, then you're going to start justifying and rationalizing a lot of manipulative and or abusive behavior in order to slap the animus. Understand that the system of consent has moved every 10 to 15 years for like the last 60 years. And that, like, you see these freakos, you see this Diddy stuff going on, you see all the stuff that's going on right now, right? What's going on right now is that there is an attack that's taking place on dominant male masculinity, right? If you want to go the route of therapy speak, understand that wanting to have this harem perspective, if you want to go to therapy with the woman, or if you want to go ethical non-monogamy, if you want to go BDSM, if you're trying to use some third-party understanding of the way that you should run your relationship to make it work and you don't have enough influence with the woman yourself, understand this right here, that there are things that you expect that aren't going to work. Right? If y'all, what you're doing right here, this is called unicorn hunting. I don't see anything wrong with unicorn hunting. I don't see anything wrong with one penis policies. I don't see anything wrong with monopoly relationships, because I understand equitable non-monogamy. But what you have to understand is that if you don't have enough influence with the woman for her to value what you say, to be consciously aware of the other narratives, and then to choose you and to choose your perspective, but from a place of really feeling free to do what she wants to do, then regardless of how logical you feel like you're being, the narrative is going to be that you're coercing this woman and trying to abuse power to get her into a position where you're getting her to accept a one-sided type of situation and relationship. And eventually that narrative of you being controlling is going to become strong. And this is why the biology first approach in transitional dating is so important. You don't sit there and try and accept a level of a relationship with a woman and then try to impose more standards and boundaries on her necessarily. You might do that from time to time to test how much her animus can be stretched, but your dominant empathy should already know how much she's willing to be stretched by you. What you do is, when you're dealing with the woman, like if you're gonna have to start over, and there's a good chance it's gonna happen, you set your standards of what's necessary for the next level of relationship when that woman has put in the work and then asks for the next level of relationship. And you have to be willing to accept that if in that moment she's simply love bombing you and not feminine submissive, that you might not keep getting the same benefits if you tell her the truth about why you're not willing to take things to the next level. And it's not going to be unless she has that wound to her ego that she needs to improve, and that this is why she can't get the full level of the next level of investment. That is the reason why you're going to be part of the chip on her shoulder when she improves herself. But what you have to understand is that if she concludes that you're just doing this just to try to put her down or whatever it is, then instead of her doing this to better gain validation with you, to get to a further position with you, she's going to be doing this to despite you. Like in my song, Drinking a Little More, right? If it's a situation where, you're saying a bunch of things that are logical and she's not going to see it until the next guy drops her off, or you're just trying to plant seeds so that she feels like she regrets her decision, then she might regret it a little bit, but she's not going to regret leaving you. She's just going to regret how, once she comes out of that fog with another man, how she feels about it, and recognizing that she may have made some mistakes if you make some good arguments. But just because you get to a point where with a woman where she's finally experiencing what you've been talking about, what you think and how you think a relationship should work, it doesn't mean that now she's going to be like, you know what, now I see I can do it with you. That's an integrated perspective, right? That's not something that a woman who's just now trying to tap into feminine submissive when she's in a low cup space is going to be able to recognize. So you have to win the game to change the rules. You need to win it at the game that you play in, right? Either you need to accept the full opening up of the Pandora's box, or you need to win this masculine submissive exercise in self-control. So what you got to understand about these things is that along the way, the type of control that you want is the type of control where you should probably just not go over searching for things. Except that if she crosses the line, she gonna get left. If she come back around, she get taxed. Focus your energy into yourself. When she messes up, you can take that opportunity to demote the woman. Understand that she might get boyfriend itch and want to go fuck with somebody else or be in a relationship with somebody else. But as long as you hold the line of what you expect and you don't give her a reaction that causes her to feel unsafe with you, you don't take it further to where she fully feels unsafe with you, then as long as you maintain a certain position, she's typically going to want to come back to you, right? She might leave for good. She might find something better. That's true. You have to accept that it's part of the game. That's part of your own anima development and acceptance that life is in a constant state of flux, right? So you understand that sexual attraction is dynamic, not static. You're just trying to get to the place where the general flow of her sexual attraction is within a range of what your program and your ego can handle without you behaving in a way that displays animal possession. And if her natural desire level isn't at a high enough level to be in alignment with your program, then understand that this woman shouldn't be in a certain position of emotional, social, and financial priority within your life. If a woman gets a pass, she should earn that pass, right? If she gets a pass, she should earn the pass. There's times where a pass is going to come. Like if a woman just had a baby by you and she's waiting for her stitches to heal, Cool, but what has she done to show you that she deserves to have a baby by you? Has she shown that she's willing to make a brand new cookbook, right? To show that she's going to be a good mother? Is she showing you these traits and qualities, and not just to love bomb when she wants something, but consistently? Is she actually able to, this is high level feminine submissiveness, can she be rewarded with dick by you, do non-sexual things to gain greater access to it, and these things be things that create a positive feedback loop in her life that cause her to have more energy and be more submissive towards you, right? These are the questions you have to ask yourself. And the truth is that if you aren't able to win the game to change the rules in this situation, you're going to put your hand on the hot stove, because you've been talking about this situation for a while now. So you're probably in a sunk cost fallacy. If you bite into this narrative and you start flip-flopping and you start trying to, you're not winning the game to change the rules. You're thinking that if you communicate and articulate and you get tired of playing these games and you just want to talk and all this other shit, and you don't let the woman get to a point where she has enough space to choose that she wants to interact with you from a feminine submissive stance, then you're going to give into a hole in your anima. You're going to find an excuse to look at things from a different psychology. And once you find that excuse, you're going to give that woman that power, and there's going to be an expectation that however she's dealing with you and interacting with you to finally get the validation that she wants is the acceptable behavior. That's the feedback loop that you're feeding into, right? And this is not something that you just communicate and articulate to a woman. You got to show her, then tell her, right? You got to show her, then tell her. Once you fully understand these narratives and you can articulate these things to yourself, you're really understanding this, that masculine dominance is masculine security and dominant empathy. Dominant empathy is your ability to live vicariously through this submissive experience, right? Meaning that you are able to instinctually feel through, whether that's your anxiety, your hypervigilance, your desires for narcissistic supply, your abilities to develop cognitive empathy through autism, whatever type of neurodivergency, whatever spectrum you're on, you're able to use this ability to identify these smaller characteristics in their energy, to feel this, and to decide that unless that desire hits a certain baseline based off of your masculine security, you're not going to approach it. But part of dominant empathy is also knowing how to raise a woman's desire and to lower it down. If a woman's in a position where she doesn't have that much energy to give and you take her too far and you're really trying to give her this out there sexual experience, you might oversex her, you might burn her out, and then she might go through subdrop. And you have to understand that there's a difference between boyfriend energy and aftercare. Aftercare comes after she's already feminine submissive enough with you to be dominated, and then you're rewarding her with aftercare, which is really lowering her desire back down some, giving some intimacy, pouring back into her cup so she doesn't hit E. And then now she's in a position where she's in subdrop and she's either like, oh, God's not happy with this, or she's in a position where she's just trying to bait and switch on you or cut you off, or she just feels unsafe. So you make sure that you give her the aftercare. But sometimes you got to understand the vicinity principle. Either you're going to stay in there and win the game and change the rules while still investing what you're